Hey guys, my name's Sarah and I'm recording this on Warringah country in New South Wales. I just wanted to start by acknowledging that I'm not an expert in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. I'm on my own personal learning journey in this area, but I'm super passionate and wanted to share it with all you legends. 2023 will be Darwin's third Southern Cross Kids Camp. 100% of our previous campers have identified as Aboriginal and/or Torres Strait Islander. We don't specifically target this population group. However, we love that as an organisation, we are entrusted with the care of each and every one of our beautiful campers. After our first camp, I was chatting to someone about this. The person I was talking to pointed out that for a bunch of predominantly white Christians, to take a group of Aboriginal children from their families for a week is a huge responsibility. It was this one comment that made me interested to invest more into this area. After camp last year, we received some feedback from our team requesting some cultural awareness training in the lead up to camp. So here we are, running our first cultural awareness training session. We don't claim to be the experts, however, we would love for this to be the start of our discussion together. Today's presentation isn't designed to be a history lesson. However, it is important to be aware of where we have come from to help us understand and recognise the privileged position we are in to serve our Aboriginal and/or Torres Strait Islander campers. This training is a very brief overview. If you are interested in finding out more, there are so many resources available for you to complete some further learning. I've included some references at the end of this presentation, however, there's so many more too. So let's get started with a brief run through some key points in the history of interaction between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people in Australia. A lot of what we read and are taught about the interaction between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people starts at the time of British settlement in Australia. However, colonisation is the result of laws and regulations that were put in place centuries before. In the 1400s, the Church made a number of decrees or laws which influenced European colonisation around the world, including here in Australia. Pope Alexander VI announced that any land not inhabited by Christians was available to be discovered, claimed, and exploited by Christian rulers. It granted full and free permission to invade, search out, capture, and subject unbelievers into perpetual slavery, forcing original inhabitants into Christianity and promoting Christian domination around the world. 2 centuries after the introduction of the papal wheels, the first fleet arrived in what we now call Australia. Despite this land being occupied for at least 60,000 years, the first settlers described a lack of evidence of land use and concluded that this continent was terra nullius, or a land belonging to no one. During this period, thousands of Aboriginal people were massacred across all states and territories, with the exact number unlikely to ever be known. The hurt within Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples extended far beyond the massacres inflicted. The impact of violence within communities and impacts from the introduction of unknown substances such as alcohol and diseases such as smallpox were also devastating on communities. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples were forced to give up their traditional lifestyles, resulting in the loss of purpose for many. The 1830s saw the commencement of the protection era. Indigenous Australians were seen as a dying race, and Western authorities provided what they saw as a decent, safe environment to live out their remaining days. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples were moved from their lands to missions. This move was made to protect them from the ravages of white society, including disease, alcohol, and sexual exploitation. There are many stories about how missions saved communities, and that they were good not because of what they were doing, but because everybody else wasn't doing anything. Within the missions, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples were locked up, isolated from society, and became institutionalised. When protection was no longer needed, they didn't know how to get out of this model. At the turn of the century, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander population was increasing. There was a shift in government policy to assimilation. No longer was the focus on providing a comfortable place to live out their days, but to breed the blackout and make Australia white. The goal was to create one Australia with the same rights, privileges, and standards of living, such as education and health. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples didn't have basic rights of citizenship or equality, and many Aboriginal people lived on the fringes of society in poverty after being forced to leave the missions they had been living in. Mixed heritage or lighter coloured skinned children were removed from their family, becoming the stolen generation, forced to abandon their language, customs, and culture in what was described as being for their own good. They were taken and detained, often denied love and the guidance of cultural wisdom, inflicting great trauma on many. This trauma continues today, and we will discuss intergenerational trauma a little later on. The 1940s saw the rise of social activism. Some of the most famous stands during this era included Charlie Perkins and the 1965 Freedom Ride in New South Wales, and Vincent Lingiari and the 1966 Wave Hill Walk-Off in the Northern Territory. Following the period of social activism, the 1967 referendum was held. It granted Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people the right to citizenship and paved the way for the period of self-determination. Self-determination recognises that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people should have the right to participate in policy and decision-making in their own lives. However, many experienced difficulties in this due to the amount of time they spent in missions and on the fringes of society, removed from their traditional lands, culture, and way of life. In 1975, the Racial Discrimination Act was introduced in Australia. The Act makes it illegal to discriminate based on race and overruled the discrepancies in state-based legislation. Since the introduction of the Racial Discrimination Act in 1975, there have been a number of key milestones in recognising the rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in Australia. From recognising that Australia was indeed inhabited when British settlers arrived to recognising the hurt that continued for many years afterwards. We are slowly learning from our past, and with the Uluru Statement of the Heart, we are invited to walk with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples for a better future. As we have seen, the role the Church has played in so much hurt and suffering within Australia has been significant. This hurt and suffering remains throughout Australia today. What a privilege it is after the Church has caused so much of this pain that we are entrusted with our precious campers. It is through having an understanding of this that we are able to shape the way we approach camp and the amazing opportunity we have to share God's love with His children. Given the significance of the events of the past, the ongoing hurt within our nation runs deep and remains raw within the community. It's easy to think that this trauma occurred a long time ago. However, the fact is that it's been less than 250 years since colonisation. Therefore, this hurt was inflicted within the lifetime of us, our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. The following video by the Healing Foundation helps explain intergenerational trauma.